Yeah, no, I think sorry. No, it's going really well. I did it a year ago, the pay as you want, and it was
Mhm.
just so revelatory for me in terms of like some of the things that Steve focuses on, in the sense of it being an expedited way of trying to get kids up to speed. And so many of my kids, 90% of my kids in my classes of what I teach middle school, all of them are below grade level. So I just find it really, really helpful.
That's amazing. That's good. And you're going through a second time. So I mean, I'm curious the difference between this course and the last course. Are you seeing improvements in how we designed it, or is it
Yeah,
different?
I do. One of the things that I think that I like about it, it's a little more kind of like streamlined.
Mhm.
I know when I did it a year ago, it took me a while to get familiar with everything. But no, and also what you guys are doing with like your YouTube page, really, really big fans of it.
Awesome. All right. You win. You get the prize.
Yay.
Listen, Steve's here. How's it going, Steve? All right, so I was going to give people a couple more minutes to get in. I'm not sure how, I mean, we have 54 folks signed up, but we never know how many people are going to come in. Let me stop the.
Well, welcome to our Wednesday workshop. And I have breaking news. There is a breakthrough technique that came to me today. It's something I observed 15 or 20 years ago in a class, and it struck me to try it with this attention issue kid. So this can be done both in comprehension and in a class setting, or in when you're doing phonics, but there's a slight variation. It's called popcorn reading. Some of you may have heard of that. So my student, when we were doing comprehension, comprehension, you're doing a lot of reading, and that can, for attention deficit kids, can be a problem. So, he would read, then I would read, and he would read, I would read, and he'd do the gist. But I noticed his attention would wane, and, he'd be looking at something else or playing with something else when I would read to him and ask the questions. And so there just wasn't a lot of life to it. So I gave him the mini lecture a week or two ago and basically said, listen, I noticed you were just staring off here doing something else. He said, yeah, I was checking out something on the board and down and on. I said, well, one of your conditions with me is you work hard. He said, yeah, I know. Didn't matter. Next time, he's still staring off in space, especially when I read. So today, it started to happen. And I thought, well, I don't want to nag. Nagging does not work. So then I remember seeing this popcorn technique in a class years ago. And I thought it was really good technique for class. So I'll talk about that, George, for your class. And I thought, well, I bet that'll work with this. And how the popcorn works is I'll read and then I'll say pop. Then he has to take over from wherever I say pop. Then he reads and he says pop, and I have to take over wherever he says pop. 100% attention for the rest of the session. 100%. It doesn't matter. Sometimes he enjoyed doing it after a few words, see if he could catch me. Sometimes he'd do a longer passage. And then once we were done, we'd still go through, give me the gist and this. But it was amazing. And for the comprehension program, I think it's just very important. So you might start with reading the first paragraph or him reading it and get him read a paragraph or two, and then you move into popcorn reading. And again, the change is pop. Now, in the phonics program, if you have a reluctant learner who spaces, okay, when it comes to reading, we never, we want to do pressure release. So he'll read when he makes his two struggles, you'll take over and you'll read a phrase, then he'll read that same phrase. Then you'll read a phrase, he'll read that. Again, the reason we don't read together is the 1 second lag on Zoom, and it becomes a mess. So I'll read, then he'll read. So, I'm going the last trip, he'll go the last trip, and I'll go was fun. He'll go. So I'm basically doing, and after 2 sentences, I give it back to him. Notice we're not leaving out words like we normally do in pressure release. Now, let's say this kid is starting to have attention deficits, attention problems, and you've done pressure release. Well, remember, we have a closure technique. And the closure technique is where I take over and I read and he fills in words that I leave out. You all know that, right? And that is good to cover ground. So let's say we've done regular pressure release and the kid's having a little trouble with attention. I'll say, okay, we're going to move into, rather than calling it the closure technique, I'm going to call it the popcorn technique. We're going to use popcorn. And here's how this is going to work. When you want to give it to me, you just say pop, and I'll take over. And when I take over, I may leave out a word you have to put in, but I'm still reading. It's only when I say pop that you take over. So I'll take over and I'll read and I'll leave out a word. He'll fill it in. I'll leave out another word. He'll fill it in. I go pop and I give it back to him. Then he reads normally. I do my regular pressure release. I point, and then when I take over, we go back to popcorn reading. So it's kind of what we were doing, which is where in the Zoom, we're basically, when we take over, we read a couple words, and then when we go back and they read them, we're basically picking up his pace a bit. But once, if he's having attention issues, we move into popcorn, where he'll read and turn it over to me, saying pop, and I'll read, I'll turn it over. But when I read, I'll leave out a word or two. So we still have that closure technique, and he'll fill it in. So questions on for comprehension and phonics before I go to classroom. So it's pretty clear. Okay. All right, classroom popcorn. This is where it was initially developed. And in classroom popcorn reading, a student, what's nice about this, a student doesn't have to pass, which I usually give a student the right to pass if he wants, because he can just popcorn it. So how it reads is Susie's reading and she'll go popcorn Bill. Then Bill will take over and he'll go popcorn John. John will take over, he'll go popcorn Allison. Then you might just take over and give somebody who's not getting it a chance to read, popcorn Bob, and you let him know I can jump in at any point. But otherwise, the kid's deciding how far he wants to read. If he's reading too much, again, I can come in and take over. That's the main difference in regular pop. So I can come in and read a bit and that. And then you can pause and do discussion. The issue is in oral reading, everybody's paying attention because they can be popcorn and they'll know you can popcorn at any point. Does that make sense? Okay. So those are good uses of that technique. So I have a teacher at Stern, I broke him in. He has real attention issues with kids. So we talked about it today right after I tried it. And so he's going to work it with the class. So we'll see if there's any bugs to work out. But literally, it was pretty amazing at the change of involvement of the kid. And it's, you know, it's like the same as gambling. Why gambling's so effective is you don't win consistently. You get it intermittently. Intermittent reinforcements is much more powerful than scheduled reinforcement, according to studies. That's why gambling's so, well, I didn't win. No, out of nowhere, I win. Same thing with popcorn reading. So anyway, very powerful technique when I'm working with a kid. And again, with the phonics, the regular pressure release where I read and you know, after 2 struggles, I'll read, then he'll reread what I read. And I'm using my finger. So he went to the store. So I do the regular pressure release. I'm trying to pick up his pace by doing that. Eventually I can just go, he read, and then he can go back and he read, but I don't want him to just do it from memory. I want him to see the text, okay? And then after 2 sentences, I give it back. So that's done normally. And then when I feel a little fatigue coming on, I can move to the popcorn reading, okay? Any questions on that?
I have a question, Steve. So when you are doing something like this and these new techniques, they work right away in the beginning, and then sometimes those techniques wane and they don't work as well if they've been used a lot. Do you have suggestions for how to mix up different behavioral motivations?
Yeah, you keep trying. I mean, in this case, I can't really see it losing its motivation because I'll just be staring at him. That's what I'll do. I'll just,
So you don't think it's going to lose its power? It's going to keep going.
well, it's kind of like press release has never lost its power for me in 50 years. Well, I probably created it 40 years ago, but it's never lost its power. I think this is one of those natural techniques that's kind of fun. See, kids never just stop reading for me. They space and lose their place and that kind of thing. So I think this will be pretty powerful. But if it's, you know, not working, I can just use contextual reading or other concepts. But I'll let you know if it loses its power, because I'll be working with this kid this next month. But it's just one of those things. When I hit on it, I knew I'd hit on a new gold technique, especially when I'm reading to them, or they're having trouble when I give it to them finding their place. That kind of thing was a non-issue. Non-issue. I mean, I'd go, he went, and I'd stop, pop. He'd go to the store, and then he'd read a bit. I mean, he had to be right on it. If a kid started to lose it, I'd pop every word. The pop, man, pop to the pop. I just pick it up, and yeah, we both laugh about it. But yeah, it was remarkable. So, but I'll be doing
Awesome.
it all month. I can tell you if it loses its power and what I do when it does.
Perfect. I look forward to hearing more about it, and hopefully we'll see some of that in maybe the Facebook group. Let's see some comments would be awesome.
Yeah.
So any other questions, or can we close this section down? Because I would like to stop the recording.